Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we've got 5 woodworking tips and tricks to make your time in the shop just a little bit easier. Well, I just want to start off today's show by saying that you may notice the show looks a little different, and it probably will for the next little while. I've had a catastrophic computer failure in which the hard drive of my main system completely crapped out, and I've lost both my editing software and quite a few episodes of the show, etc, etc, etc. I did have them backed up, however, I can't get them back onto the system because the hard drive is done. So I have a new system on the way. It's going to take about a month to get it up and running. So for now, we're using a little less of a professional style of editing software. So the show may look a little different, just to let you know. I'm kind of scrambling now to get things going and to get shows produced to fill the gaps for the programs that I lost. Either way, guys, tips and tricks are a very popular thing on the internet, and there's all kinds of little things that you can do, or even sometimes it's something as small as something that you just didn't realize, and that is where our first tip takes us. So let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Well, our first tip of the day is something that some new woodworkers really don't know, and I have removed our bottom base plate off of my trim router just to give us some clarity on seeing this whole assembly here. Now, guys, sometimes these collets do not release, and that can be a problem. It's difficult to get the bit out and it will bind. And a lot of guys get in there, especially newcomers to the craft, and they'll get a pair of pliers on this bit and they'll try to pull it out, they'll wiggle it, they'll jerk it back and forth. And all they're going to do by doing those movements is they're going to ruin their bit. They're going to bend it, they're going to break it, they're going to mar it. So I just want to show you the easiest way, if a router bit collet has bound, how to get it open. And this is not just for trim routers, guys. This is for any router across the board. So right now that bit is bound in there and it doesn't want to release. So all you need to do is loosen up your collet and take your wrench and just tap the nut slightly. That's it. That will release your collet and you can easily pull your bit out. Trim routers are famous for it, guys, especially the DeWalt model. I don't know why, but I know that the DeWalt quite often will bind in here on this single slot collet, and it will not release the bit. So just remember, if you've got a bit ground in there, don't reach for the pliers. Don't try to pull the bit out by force. Just give a little light tapping on the collet nut, and that bit will release right away. Well, our next tip has to do with anything that has some kind of a veneer on the top. In this case, it's melamine. It could be plywood. Plywood, that top surface is a veneer, but it has a habit of chipping or tearing out, whether it be on the top surface or whether it be on the bottom surface. Now, there is really no substitute for a good sharp blade to cut this to avoid that chip out. So let me just show you with a sharp blade how the cut looks. Now we can see here on the top surface a very clean cut, no chipping whatsoever. This is on the top, but on the lower surface where the blade is cutting down through it and exiting the melamine, you can see here we have a little bit of chipping along that edge. So how do you avoid that, even with a sharp blade? Well, painter's tape or masking tape is your friend here. So we're just going to take a little bit of blue painter's tape. We're going to place it along our cut line, rub it down, make sure that we have a really good adhesion of that painter's tape. And now we're going to run this through for another pass through the blade. If you had a dull blade or a blade that was chipping out on the top, you could put your masking tape on the top as well. But let's run this through with the masking tape on the bottom, and I'll show you what a difference it makes. And once again, we can see here a very nice crisp edge, no chipping whatsoever on the top half. But how did our bottom half do with the masking tape? Well, we'll just carefully peel that off. And look at that. We have got a very nice clean edge. We have one little tiny chip right there. But other than that, this is a clean edge all the way along with next to no chipping. This works, guys, with plywood. This works with anything that has some kind of thin veneer on the top. So if you're having problems with chip out and that sort of thing, get yourself a little bit of blue painter's tape or masking tape and apply it along the cut lines. Well, our next tip is all about finding the center of a dowel. Of course, if you have center finding devices, you can always use them, whether it be this adjustable center finding square, or if you have one of these kind of things. I'm sure you've seen these around. You can use either of those, but what if you don't have those? Well, there's a very easy way that you can find the exact center of any dowel of any diameter. And what I'm going to do is I have a 0.5 mechanical pencil here. It can be any pencil, guys. The 0.5 is just what I use here in the shop. And what I'm going to do is I have this scrap of junky plexiglass, and I'm going to tape my pencil to the plexiglass. The only purpose for this is just to make it run smoothly on the bench. This has a rubber sleeve on it which will prevent it from running smoothly. So it doesn't even have to be plexiglass. It can be a piece of wood, it could be a piece of cardboard, it can be anything if you have a rubber sleeve on there. Just something to allow this now to slide easily on the bench. So what you want to do is hold your dowel and just run your pencil across. Place a mark. Rotate your dowel, place a mark. Rotate it, place a mark. You can continue placing these marks all the way around. They don't have to be perfect. And at some point in time, once you place enough marks, there, I'm going to stop it there. You will see in the middle a very clear outline there of where the center is, that little tiny circle. And if you need to drill a hole in that center, whether it be for something like a scale model where you're making wooden pistons, as you see me do here on the show, or whether you want to butt joint this onto another piece of dowel to extend it, and you want to put a dowel in between and glue it as your glue joint to strengthen it, this is giving you a very clear indication as to where the center is. And you can just line up your punch in the middle of that, give it a little mark with your punch, just like this, your scratch all, your punch, and there you go. That is the exact center of this dowel, and it costs you nothing. It's a junk piece of plexiglass, a little bit of tape, and the pencil that you would use in the shop anyway. So there you go. You want to find the center of a dowel? Just mark it with your pencil. Well, this next tip is using something in your shop that I like to call sandpaper files. And what I've got here, guys, is a piece of 3/4 inch MDF. It doesn't matter the dimensions. It's whatever you have. This is just a piece of scrap. And I have a sheet of 180 grit sandpaper. So I'm going to lay my my MDF here on my sandpaper so that the sandpaper kind of sits inside of the outer edge just a little bit. So we're going to mark this out now with a pencil, just like that, and we'll cut out that square of sandpaper. And what we end up with is a piece of sandpaper that is just a little bit smaller than what our block of MDF is. Now guys, at this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to use spray adhesive. I'm going to spray it on the back of this sandpaper. We're going to let it set up for 3 minutes to get it really good and tacky, and then we're going to apply the sandpaper here onto our MDF and gently rub it down. Don't rub it too hard because you'll end up injuring your hands. And you end up with this. Now, guys, from here, you can just leave it like this, and as you need a new file, a new sanding file, you can take it over to the table saw, rip off a piece of 3/4 inch wide or 5/8 wide, 1 inch wide, 2 inches wide, whatever you need to facilitate your sanding or filing needs at the time. And because we've used 3/4 inch MDF, it's very rigid, so you can get it and use it like a file, but it's a lot less aggressive, and instead of it leaving the tooth marks of the files, it's leaving a nice smooth finish. So you're kind of filing and sanding at the same time. These guys are great if you're going to be doing scale models. That nothing replaces these for getting really good crisp sanded edges. Get yourself some of these, make them up, put this off to the side, cut off pieces as you need it, and you won't be disappointed. So there you go, sanding files. Well, our last tip of the day has to do with spray adhesive, which we used in our last tip for the sanding files. Guys, inevitably, when using a can of spray adhesive, you end up with a nozzle that pretty much looks like this, and it's pretty much useless. Hardly anything sprays out of it, and it doesn't seem to matter how much you clean it in between your sprays, it still ends up like that. So this is what we're going to do. Anytime you run out of spray adhesive, if you use the same brand, keep the top. Now this one here is not empty, but the nozzle is clogged. So what you want to do is carefully grab a hold of it like that with pliers, and you can pull it off. Now, inevitably in here, there is some adhesive in there that is dried, and it's just a sticky mess. So your first step that you want to do is using a little bit of paint thinner or mineral spirits or Varsol. Use a cotton swab and get in here with the cotton swab dipped in Varsol, or as I said, paint thinner or mineral spirits, and give this here a really good cleaning to get off any of the glue residue. And once you're done, you can just put that aside. Now guys, what I have here is an old mason jar, and inside that old mason jar is a whole bunch of spray nozzles that I have saved from our glue over the years. And we're just going to take a little piece of paper towel here. You can see how sticky this is. It's sticking to my fingers. Put that over there. And we're going to reach in here, and I have one of my old glue nozzles soaking in this mineral spirits or Varsol or whatever. This is mineral spirits. And all you need to do is take it, and you can tap it down on this paper towel. That will force air through here, clearing out that nozzle. And as well, it will get the mineral spirits out from the inside. You can take a little cotton swab if you wish and clean up the actual spray head of the nozzle. And as long as you have cleaned up the top of your can fine and you have pulled this out and it's fresh, you could just push this right back on there, just like that. And guys, you now have a brand new spray nozzle. This sprays like it just came off the shelf out of the store now, and it works beautifully. And then this one here that is gummed up so badly that you can't use it anymore, just plop it in there, put the cover on, and you can let that sit until the next time you're ready to replace the nozzle. Some guys for years have been saying, oh, well, this thing's all clogged now, I don't get to use the glue, and they throw it out. That is such a waste. By saving these nozzles, you can go from this to this. And guys, get way more use out of your cans of spray glue. And there you have it. 5 woodworking tips and tricks that'll make your day in the shop just a little bit easier. Guys, these are not earth-shattering tips. They are not mind-blowing. They are very simple, common sense things that some people who are new to the craft may not think of, especially that router collet thing. I remember years ago when I first started trying to get the bit out of a collet, and I nearly destroyed the bit trying to do it. A very frustrating process. And if I would have just tapped that collet nut, it would have popped out and I could have saved my bit. But I was young, I was inexperienced, and I figured brute force was the way to go. That's not necessarily the case with woodworking. So although you may have already heard some of these tips before, hopefully you've been able to pull something a little extra out of them. Hopefully you've been able to pull something positive out of them. Guys, this one's been a lot of fun. I always enjoy the tip show. If you've got a woodworking tip that you use and that you enjoy in your shop, why not tell me about it down below in the comments? Or you can drop me an email at kennye@acutabovewoodworkings.com. Guys, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your tips. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We have a great audience base here, guys, and I hope that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed today's content. I hope you were able to learn something new today that maybe you didn't know before. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.